نعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. We seek refuge in Allah from the accursed shaitan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, most merciful, especially merciful. Subhanaka, glory be to you, O Allah. La ilma lana, there is no knowledge for us. Illa ma 'allamtana, except that which you teach us. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una. O Allah, teach us that which will be beneficial for us. Wa zidna ilma, and increase us in knowledge. Wa ruzuqna fahma, and grant us understanding. Ya muqallib al-qulub, O changer of hearts, thabbit qulubana ala dinik, keep our hearts firm on your deen. Allahumma ja'al a'malana khalisatan liwajhik, O Allah, grant our actions to be done sincerely for your sake. Wa la taj'al fiha hadha lighayrik, and yet they not be in them a portion for other than you. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to tonight's topic, conflict and communication in relationships, with our esteemed presenter, Uncle Edris Khamissa. Before we begin, we will be playing a short video on our campaign to help 3 orphaned boys in Cape Town. It's just a 1-minute clip, so we will watch the clip and then we will begin our session tonight, inshallah.
Some days I feel I can't walk anymore, but then I say Allah lets me free the pain and to walk further on. I'm just living to survive. I do it for the kids.
Please consider donating generously to our campaign this month. So we will now begin our session on conflict and communication in relationships with our esteemed presenter, Uncle Edris Khamissa. If you have any questions, please submit them at the Google form, which you'll find in the chat box. That's just to keep the chat box free from any distractions. And you will remain anonymous using this link, so you don't have to say, please keep me anonymous. And I will be asking the questions at the end of the session. You can turn off your videos. You do not need your videos to be on. And that's it from me. Tafaddal, ya Uncle Edris. Bismillah.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the Lord of all the worlds, to whom we belong and to whom is our return, and may His choicest blessing go to the highest of Allah's creation, our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the most generous in companionship, the most gentle in speech, the most eloquent ambassador to humanity at large. What a gift to us, what a gift to humanity, what an inspiration, what an inspiration. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My beloved brothers and sisters, I want to say a few things in my preamble. One of the things that I want to mention, that I want none of you to be passive listeners. I want none of you to think perhaps my spouse should also be here to listen to this particular presentation. I want you to confront your true self. One of the big challenges in life is that it's very facile or very easy to make judgment about others, but very difficult to make judgment about ourselves. And therefore, as believers, we are expected to do a self-appraisal, a self-evaluation before you go to bed, so that we understand and ask ourselves, how was our day? Was it productive? Was it aligned to our purpose? What were my relationships like? What were my attitude towards my colleagues? What was my relationship with Allah? And that is very, very important. And also, I want to mention in my introduction that we are told by psychologists that if you do not change within 48 hours after a presentation, it's unlikely you are going to change. It is unlikely you're going to change. Now, that attitude that often prevails, people say, that's me, see? This is my personality. This is how I do things. But my beloved brothers and sisters, there are certain ethics in Islam, and we got to follow that. We got to follow the Quran, and you got to follow this beautiful example of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in terms of his relationships with people. Happiest are those individuals who can handle a diverse group of individuals. And I want you to listen to this very carefully. A diverse group of individuals, knowing that the other is unique, knowing that he cannot speak the same way to each one of them because they are different. Their personalities are different. And that is very critical. So this attitude to say, you know what, hey, I'm so glad, man. I told her exactly how I felt. I told her what I felt. And you feel great about it. Yes, you have unleashed your anger, but what about the destruction that follows after that? Now, what is important is this, that the emotion of anger is natural. The emotion of sadness is natural. The emotion of happiness is natural. This is part of who we are. It's precisely what we say when we are in those situations that is very critical. Never say anything in anger that is going to be damaging, humiliating, or demeaning. So that is also very important. The other point I want to make is this, a point that is often forgotten. When you look at communication, think about it. I want to ask you a question. What percentage of communication is related to words? What percentage of communication is related to tone and pitch? And lastly, what percentage you think is related to gestures, facial expression, and body language? So there are three columns there: words, what percentage; tone, pitch, what percentage; body language, gestures, and facial expression. Think about it. Well, I'm going to tell you. Words, surprisingly, only carry 7% of the total communication. And you and I know some words are so painful, so offensive, the damage they do forever is unbelievable. Like saying talaq in the fit of anger. We do not doubt it. So anyway, in general communication, words carry 7%, 38% goes to tone, pitch, and so on, and 55% goes to facial expression and body language. So the non-verbal aspect carries far more weight than the words. So you got to understand, for example, our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he spoke to any person, he faced that individual. If he shook your hand, he had his hand clasped with yours. His head did not turn away from you as he spoke to you. So what is he telling you? He says, he's telling you, as I speak to you and as I listen to you, I'm with you totally. I'm focused on you. What does that do? It affirms you, it validates you, it acknowledges you, it accepts you. So that is very, very important. The other aspect I want to mention is the whole issue of self-discovery. You've got to discover what is it that motivates you? What is it that makes you laugh? What is it that makes you angry? Ask yourself, what is it? To what extent your childhood experiences, your experiences with your friends have shaped those attitudes? To what extent, for example, the trauma that you might have gone through has shaped your experience? And you and I know there are some of us that are eternal optimists and the others that are pessimists. There are those for every solution, they'll find a problem, whilst others for every problem will find a solution. Now to say something very quickly in passing, and I want you to think about this. You may sometimes wonder, even when it comes to your children, that a few of them, say if you've got about 3 kids or 4 kids, 3 of them might be inclined towards you, but one is not inclined towards you. In fact, one feels some kind of antipathy towards you. And this might shock you. But you need to look back at that particular child's experiences. And perhaps he has gone through some kind of trauma and he associates the trauma with you. And therefore, the only anger he can direct is towards you. So you need to understand that. See, you need to understand and you need to be patient. You need to reaffirm yourself. You need to be a good listener. You need to be empathetic. Anyway, I just thought I'll just share that with you. And in my introduction again, I want each one of us to remember the example of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. His gentleness, his affectionate nature, his loving nature towards the aged, to the young, and to his spouses. His communication style, even with his worst enemies. It is precisely his conduct and the way he spoke, how he spoke, the smile that he had that brought people to him and to the deen of Islam. It is precisely that nature that the Quran waxes lyrical about. The other aspect I want to speak about in passing is something that I've often spoken about, is the whole issue of emotional intelligence. I'm not going to discuss this in detail. Perhaps during the presentation, I'll make reference to it and I would explain that. And one more thing that you got to all understand is the issue of self-esteem. When you got low self-esteem, you'll feel a sense of insecurity. If you got low self-esteem, you'll misinterpret even the most innocuous, even the most non-sinful thing some of the most innocent things that you would misconstrue it because of the way you are. So the issue of self-esteem is important. Right. Now, what I want to do is I have put together, Alhamdulillah, I made an acronym, and you could improve on this acronym on the word communicate. I made an acronym. So if you look at and it's spelled, I am sure all of you can spell that. And maybe you should have some pen and paper and write this. I hope you're taking down notes. These one Sahaba, I think it was, went to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said to him, "O Prophet of Allah, whenever you speak, I forget." So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him 3 times, "Right, right, right." So what I would like you to do is to write the word communicate. Write it C, and below that O, M, M, U, N, I, C, A, T, E. Now you're going to ask yourself, firstly, why do we communicate? We communicate to share our feelings. We communicate to ask questions. We communicate to express a doubt. We communicate to inspire. We communicate because we are social beings. We are gregarious beings. So that's how we communicate. And you can communicate with words. You can communicate with a smile. You can communicate with silence. Sometimes silence is far more eloquent than words. And we need to understand this. So in other words, communication, it is fundamental. It is imperative. When couples do not talk to each other, you are, in essence, communicating. What are you communicating? You're communicating that you despise each other. You're communicating that, you know what, I hate you. That's what you are doing. So communication is basically an opportunity to say the right things at the right time so that it will bring closeness to you and to the problem and to your loved one. So the first C is you communicate because you care, because you love the person. You want to sort out something. You communicate because the C there again is out of concern. You're concerned. The C also, you communicate because of your compassionate nature. Now, on the other side of the C is when the person speaks, he speaks with care, concern, and compassion, then it's your responsibility to listen with care, concern, and compassion, because it cannot be one-sided, right? So both parties must be on the same page. Speak with love and respond with love. The O is about being open. What do I mean by being open? I mean, there is no discrepancy between what you say and what you feel. And when you are open, your body language will reflect that. You cannot, for example, say, yes, darling, I agree with you, but your body language suggests otherwise. Your hands are folded, your legs are crossed, so it shows there is a discrepancy. So an open. Now, what do I also mean by being open? In other words, sharing your true feelings. You're open about it. You are not diluting it. You do not pretend it doesn't exist. Because one of the things that I want to also add at this point is that sometimes you go to some homes, they are a picture of tranquility, of sakina, and they don't seem to have an issue. But perhaps there are more issues than another home where there are arguments that are taking place. Because it may be in that home, They are suppressing their feelings. They're not talking about it. They're suffering silently. The N is you must become a master of communication, master in communication. What do you mean by master? Being a master means knowing the subtle nuances, knowing body language, knowing the appropriate tone, knowing, for example, the response from your loved one. How are they responding? And in that way, you become better. And you also become a master if you understand the individual, the personality that you are dealing with. The next M, and I'm sure you could improve on this, the next M is about being malleable. What do I mean by malleable? I mean, I like that word. I said, my gosh, I'm going to use the word malleable, you know. Malleable is the ability to be flexible and not to be entrenched, not to be stubborn about things, the ability, to be responsive to the other, and ability to change your communication style to suit that particular individual and the issue. Right. And when I said master, that the person listening to the other must also be a master listener. What do I mean by that? To listen with empathy, to listen to the words, to understand the subtext and the context. The U is understanding. Now, the understanding is to understand yourself, to understand the other person, to understand the uniqueness of the other, to understand it. It is so fundamental. It is so fundamental. If, for example, you got a partner, a loved one that is ultra sensitive, then I'm not saying that you do not share your concern, but how do you share your concern is important. And regarding that, you got to, in other words, be observant. You got to also understand what to be more palatable. You got to understand when, for example, issues of import need to be discussed. The N means the now. Now, the now is important. You got to, when you are engaging each other, you got to listen, you got to be present, you got to be in the now. You cannot live in the past. The past, my beloved brothers and sisters, is a point of reference, and it is not your residence. It's a point of reference, and it is not your residence. The I, my friends, must be cancelled. The I must become us. In other words, when you are communicating, it's not about scoring points. As Hazrat Ali mentioned, it's better to win the friend than the argument. It's not about scoring points. The question is, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? The C, we have done C-O-M-M-U-N-I-C. C means concise. Be direct, be concise. Don't flirt around the issue. Be concise. The A is attitude. The only thing, one of the only few things that you're in control of is your attitude, the choices you make in life. So attitude. So your attitude when someone is pointing an area of concern must be receptive. You know how often you tell your wife or husband, no, darling, she say, yes, I agree with you, but my friend, there's no time for but. No buts here, right? The T must be trust. When there is trust, then communication can be facilitated. Communication can be enabled when there is trust. And the last word there is E. And remember this, my beloved brothers and sisters, you could use your own acronym, right? E is for empathy. 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 In other words, you are trying to understand the other person. You are trying to understand their nature. So yes, so the critical aspect of communication is to bring people close together. Communication is a means to bring people together. So it's critical. Therefore, as a human being, what is important in the end, we are told this so often. People will forget what you told them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. How you made them feel. Now, I am reminded here once again about this beautiful, and all the hadiths are beautiful, the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he said words to this effect, that believers are mirrors unto each other. And remember, when it comes to the mirror, you go to the mirror doesn't come to you. But when you get to the mirror, if you're wearing a white thobe, for example, the mirror would reflect that whiteness. And you perhaps say to you, you're looking, oh, great, mashallah. You, to the female, say, listen, you're looking so gorgeous. How's it? You're looking so gorgeous. And to the man, oh, you're looking like, oh, my gosh, my gosh. At the same time, it will say to you, I don't know if you notice on the left side here, there is a speck. There is a speck. And you say, oh, I did not know this. You'll be thankful. Now, what is important? This is a critical thing. Psychologists say there is a ratio of 5-to-1, as it were. Of the 5-6 complementary things you say to your spouse, there must be only one negative or one area of concern. Often in many homes, people say this, often the wife says this, my husband shows no gratitude. He comes here in a foul mood, he reprimands me and chastises me. Or the husband might say, when I come home, the moment I come home, my baby just complains. She complains, she shouts at me, she tells me you are useless and so on and so forth. Now you can imagine how that would destroy the esteem, how it would have a profound negative impact. So there we are with the first part. I don't know about your guys, but I'm having a great time. Now, how can we have effective communication? How can we ensure that the communication is effective? I'm going to suggest to you a few things, some of the things that I've also mentioned early on, right? The important thing is this, that you've got to focus on the current issue. Now, this is important. If over a period of time, issues were never discussed or exhausted, there is a tendency for some people to say, you know what, let's talk about it tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Or sometimes, and this is an important caveat, an important precondition. Even though you might think the issue is petty, even though you think it is petty, if your spouse thinks it is important, then the issue is important. That is, if they say to you, if your spouse tells you, you know, darling, I am very upset with you, and you're thinking, man, my gosh, how can she be so petty? but you need to discuss them. So the important thing is this, and I want to say this to you, that you have to focus on the current issue. You know, one man, I mean, I heard this is a joke, I'm sure, I hope sure it did not happen, when he said that my wife is historical. So the man's other friend said, you mean you are saying she's hysterical? He says, no, she is historical. And he said, what do you mean? He says, when I tell my wife, I'm sorry about what happened yesterday, she would remind me of what happened in 1896, 1914, 1915, 1916, so on and so forth. And I think that is not appropriate. Focus on the current issue and deal with it, inshallah. The next point regarding effective communication is there should be no discrepancy between your words and your body language, whether you are speaking or whether you are listening. There must be no ambiguity. There has to be no ambiguity. When you tell your wife, I love you, my darling, my baby, my shushu babulina, then you cannot, for example, at the same time, have your arm, fold your arms and move away. Then you are saying that it is not true. Secondly, whatever the issue is, you got to deal with it. Some people follow what you call an avoidance approach, which is not proper. You got to deal with it. Number three, throughout the interaction, there has to be respect. There must be respect. You cannot use demeaning words, foul words. There is no place for profanity or vulgarity. The other point is you got to accept the fact that the issue at hand can be viewed uniquely. From your spouse's eyes, she may be seeing things, the same things, differently. But from your eyes, you are seeing it also differently. So there is the subjectivity, there is also this element of interpretation. So this is something that you got to bear in mind. Also, when you are having this discussion, it has to be fair. Avoid insults. Avoid screaming. You can communicate without screaming. You can say the same thing. You could differ without being disagreeable. The other point is this: you got to be very, very clear, and you must be precise, clear and precise. Now, the next point I want to just elaborate a little bit longer is the fact that you got to be honest about your feelings, because it is those feelings that really come to play. You got to say to this, darling, whenever this happened, I feel this. I feel diminished. I feel hurt. I feel marginalized. Instead of saying, you always make me feel this way, you are the one, rather say what you feel. At the same token, whilst you need to be honest, you've got to be very, very sensitive. You've got to be very, very sensitive. And when you are sensitive, you are showing that although I have some issues with my spouse, but I'm going to show sensitivity to her feeling. The next point is this: you could avoid making excuses or accepting excuses. You got to be adult enough to avoid doing that. The next one is something that often I find people have difficulty, is you got to listen without interruption. Listen without interruption. Right? And the next point is you got to ask questions if you want some clarity, if you want some clarification, or if you have some doubt. Also, this perhaps is the most important point, that whilst you are engaging in the discussion, whilst you want to communicate effectively, you've got to be self-aware. You got to know how you are speaking. You got to say, hey, Edris, my tone is too harsh. Come down, brother, come down, right? Or else, you know what, I'm perhaps saying things that are hurtful. So you, instead of you using snarling words, you need to use purring words. What you need to do is to use purring words, right? So that's where we are now. And the next area I'm going to talk about is about the main reasons, some of the main reasons. I have not exhausted them, and I'm sure in your discussion you would share with me others, right? Reasons for the conflict. Okay, are we okay? Are we there? Right on. Let's go. Let's go. Right. Next one. Reasons for conflict. One of an area that is often cited as a reason for conflict is the issue of money. Money, 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 money. It's a big man's world. Oh, you heard that song, right? Money, 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 money. So money is a big, big issue in homes. And therefore, one of the things that I often recommend, and I've written a book, is called premarital conversations and beyond. Money is a big, big issue. So this matter has to be resolved. Now, the issue of money comes in different forms. It could come across a budget. Sometimes the spouse complains that she gets little or no spending money, or the other is about ownership about things, and that can be very, very problematic. And let me tell you something. When husbands and wives fight, remember this: Allah is not pleased. The barakah in the home goes. I've seen homes where they live modestly, but they are very happy. I've seen in some homes, they live in palaces, palatial life, great cars, wonderful, but there is unhappiness in that home. Right? The next issue, I don't have it in any particular order, is the issue of the in-laws. The in-laws. Money and in-laws has been cited as one of the two of the four reasons regarding divorces, the in-laws. The third issue, and this is something that surprises people, is the fact when the husband and wife have a different perspective regarding the nurturing and growing up of children. So when couples have a divergent philosophy regarding that, it can be very, very problematic. Just to give you an example, let us say the mother is very soft, the father is hard, or vice versa. And if one of the spouses feels they don't get support from the other, and children would manipulate that. So whilst I'm not saying that each one of us have to be similar or identical in every aspect, whilst they're going to be perhaps a nuanced approach or some subtle difference, but the bottom line must be, there has to be commonality, right? You got that? Right. Next one. That we got to understand that men and women are different in more ways than one. We got to understand the difference, right? For example, they say on average, a man speaks 12,500 words a day, a woman 25,000 words a day. A man and woman want to deal with conflicts differently. A woman is more nurturing, a man is much more direct. A woman wants far more sensitivity. So we need to understand that. You've got to understand, and that is also problematic. The other area that is also causes a conflict is the issue of household chores. Household chores. Now you find in many homes, husband and wife share household chores, and my wife is right here, so I don't pretend to be involved in many of the household chores. In fact, when my beloved wife tells me, darling, you know, why don't you help with the household chores? And she says, hard work never kill anyone. I said, darling, I don't want to be the first casualty. But yes, I should help my beloved wife on household chores. And she's shaking her head vigorously. There we are, right? So I had to say that because she was around, you see, right? The next one is the whole issue about when people have entrenched attitudes. When you got entrenched attitudes, when you're not prepared to change, when you are stubborn, that can be very, very problematic. The other reason for conflict is when you do not spend enough time with each other, quality time. The other reason is also when spiritually you are on two different pages. When one is spiritual, the other is not. The other one is when each one of us is carrying baggage of the past, and that baggage impacts on the way we relate to each other. So there are many reasons, issues of drugs and others. So I just shared some of the broad reasons. Now, the question is this, and this is important. You cannot ignore the fact that you've got issues. You cannot ignore it. You've got to face those issues. And you've got to understand the person, right? Now, what you got to understand that while some people argue that it is normal to have conflicts in relationships, and you got to understand that people involved in a conflict are different. They are different. They have different desires. And because of the different desires and needs, they'll inevitably have a conflict. Now, when you try to resolve disagreements in a healthy way, what does it do? It creates understanding. It brings couples together. The whole aim of resolving the conflict should be to improve the relationship, not to exacerbate it. And this is critical. Now, the whole thing is this. Now, it does not mean, now some people think an ideal situation is when my wife and I agree on everything. Well, let me tell you, that happens a very, very boring relationship. Boring. It's important. Even the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there were other perspectives. But this perspective, long as did not go against the Sharia, no one took it, seriously. Now, remember in the beginning, I alluded to self-esteem. When you got a healthy self-esteem, You would assert yourself. You'll be a person that will be communicating. You will be able to lay the foundation so that fights will be avoided. But today, what happens? There are very few role models in terms of the way we express our anger and the way we handle conflict. Sometimes one partner could be passive and other could be aggressive. What you got to understand, and I want to explain this to you. Self-esteem has got nothing to do with the car you drive or how pretty you think you are or amount of money you have. What's your position in society? Self-esteem is basically recognizing that you're a unique creation of Allah. And what are the attributes of people with high self-esteem? Think about it. I'm giving you a second whilst I sip on something. What are the attributes? The attributes of people with high self-esteem is that they have a generosity of spirit, they are forgiving, they are decisive, they are not control freaks, they listen with empathy, they're able to initiate a discussion, they are very, very forgiving, they recognize their own strengths and they recognize areas for development. And they do not have a victim mentality. Now, on the other extreme, if you had low self-esteem, what would you find there? You find that you're a kind of person that takes things personally. Anything is said, yeah, you're always picking on me. You're always picking on me. Come on, my friends. Now, if you got low self-esteem, you need to look back and find out how and why. And your self-esteem can change overnight. It depends on you. When you got low self-esteem, you become very, very defensive. Also, you find it very, very hard to express your needs and your wants. Instead of you responding to a person, you react. You become a people pleaser. And this is important. When you got low self-esteem, you do not take responsibility for your behavior, your feelings, and your needs. You are going to blame the other. You have an inability to be honest. And you have, yes, this is an important thing. You have undisclosed and unreasonable expectations of others. So in other words, what happens, others have no idea what you expect of them. Now, one of the things is this, that let's share what are some of the do's and some of the don'ts. You got to make it clear that we should learn to agree to disagree. And learn to accept the differences as long as it does not violate your value system. And also when you are discussing this, resolving a conflict, have a time frame. And in that time frame, you have an opportunity to ventilate and you can always reconvene. Sometimes what happens, we continue and we do so much of damage, unbelievable. Therefore, what we said earlier on, stick to the issue at hand. And remember, in Islam, as we learn, separate the action from the individual. Condemn the action, but do not condemn the individual. Again, as we said, use I statements. I statements. Say, I feel this. This is how I feel. Next one, which is also very important, show what you like to see as the outcome. Show when both of you are together, how it will make a difference. And also, when you listen, you got to listen and show an interest. And when you show an interest in the discussion, it makes a very, very big difference. You got to show that. You know, it's wrong when two people are discussing an important issue. One is animated, interested, whilst the other is not interested at all. Also, instead of one person suggesting the solution, say, you know what, my darling, yes, we have discussed this. What do you think we should do? Eh? What do you think we should do? That discussion is important. And when you start to get angry, calm down and reassure your partner you are going to resume. You need to take breaks. And also, do not be shy to communicate your fears and also some of your guilt. Don't do this. The don'ts are also very, very important. Don't have controversial discussions when you are tired or in the bedroom, right? But the bedroom is supposed to be a safe place. And don't make accusations. Don't say, you always do this. You never do this. And because you know that is not true. And do not bring other people's opinions there. Don't say, you know what? I'm not the only person who observed this about you. I think everyone thinks that you are a, don't use this word, nincompoop, that you are stupid, stupid, stupid. Don't say that. And talk, be disciplined, talk about that particular thing. Do not bring other aspects into it. Do not do that. Do not belittle, do not be sarcastic, right? Do not blame, do not be dismissive. Remember this, don't expect your partner to read your mind. Do not also impute intentions or motives. Do not interrupt. Do not react. Do not bring up the past. Do not do all of those things. So my friends, my beloved brothers and sisters, the reality is that in my experience as a counselor, I have found a lots of individuals who are immature, infantile, who are not prepared to listen to the truth. And remember, it is when you invest in each other, when you seek Allah's guidance, and when you try to give recognition to the sacred institution of marriage, you'll find that you're going a long way. The bottom line is, my friends, that you have to and you must recognize who you are in the conflict. I said this to you, and I'm going to end it off here, and I'll take questions. I'm going to speak about emotional intelligence. This is very important. EQ is very critical. Emotional intelligence is something that you learn from your parents, you learn in school, and you find that the person with the high EQ would not allow his feelings to control what he says and does. You become vigilant, become self-aware, and you become aware of the other person. One of the great benefits of a high EQ, you do not suffer from a meltdown. You do not say, well, now I don't know why I married you. You recognize and you're grateful for the many beautiful things in your marriage, but you are disappointed with one aspect. People with high EQ can self-motivate themselves, they're positive, and they are also able to inspire others. So I would stop there, inshallah. I enjoyed this presentation. I hope and pray that some of the things that I mentioned, you could apply in your home and in your life. So if you could ask me questions, I'm sure the organizers will arrange that. Are we going to do it through the Q&A, or how are we doing it? I'm not too sure.
I will Jazakallah khairan for that talk. It definitely was beneficial, and being someone who's married, I definitely can relate to a lot of those points and can agree to them. Alhamdulillah. So yes, so to everyone attending, shukran for attending thus far, and please ask your questions via the chat box. I will be reading them out now and asking our presenter. Just before I do so, I just want to remind everyone that we will be having a program on Wednesday evening on depression from the Islamic perspective, hosted by psychiatrist Dr. Rania Awad from the USA, originally from Syria, I think. So if you haven't signed up for that, please do so, inshallah. Okay, so I shall be asking the questions now. One moment. Here we go. This question is, my husband and I struggle to communicate serious issues, but he doesn't think we have a problem. So let me just say that again. So my husband and I struggle to communicate serious issues, but he doesn't think we have a problem. Problems often get brushed under the carpet and I feel unheard. How do we overcome this?
Yeah, firstly, I want to say that this is not unique to this individual. This is something that I've come across many times. In fact, whenever I'm counseling, some husbands will tell their wife, listen, there's nothing wrong with me. You can go for counseling alone. But yet we're talking about the institution of marriage. I think when a person adopts that attitude, I don't know the particular situation, the exact situation there, I would say then that person is showing no respect for the institution of marriage. We are garments unto each other. If something is paining your wife, you need to resolve it. You need to listen. You need to see it from her perspective. And if that can't be done, then perhaps get a family member or someone else to help you to deal with this.
Yeah, shukran for that. The next question asks, my husband and I were separated, then we went for counseling. We got back together, and not sure if it was due to COVID, but being in the same house 24/7 has caused so much of tension and irritation and frustrations. Just don't know how to move past all of this. So I'm guessing she's asking for advice on how to move past this.
Okay, firstly, people thought that with this COVID, when they're going to spend time with each other, this would rekindle the passion for each other. It will restore sanity, and there'll be a lot of love in that home. But the opposite has happened. The opposite has happened for numerous reasons. The one is that many of us have no goals in life. If you were to write down what I need to do for the day, you'd be surprised how much you need to do. Now, if there is an issue and there has been separation, right? I'm very sorry to hear about this, but if there was separation, then you sadly cannot live in the past, and hopefully learn from the mistakes of the past, and you need to move on.
Shukran. The next question, my husband does so much for me and is loving, but I can't handle how he reacts when he is angry. He becomes very angry and sometimes he swears. It isn't easy to talk about issues to him sometimes because he becomes defensive. I'm asking myself whether I remain in this marriage. How do you remain in a marriage where your partner becomes disrespectful when they are upset?
Yeah, you see the whole issue of anger. Anger is an emotion that that we all have. But it's what you express and how you say that, and we have to be gentle with our spouses. So I would recommend, that if there are deep underlying issues that trigger that anger, then he needs to see a psychologist or someone that can manage his anger. He has to do that, And but that's why when you find, at the beginning of the marriage, when we're still in the honeymoon phase, if there's a sign that your spouse is temperamental, that's the right time to recommend that he seeks help.
Okay, Shukran. How do I communicate with someone who is just not approachable? They keep picking on you, your past, blames you constantly for everything that goes wrong, and keeps attacking my feelings. Every argument the person keeps saying or suggesting I must leave. So the question is, how do you communicate? How do I communicate with this person?
That's very, very sad that this happens, when you ask someone to leave, where do they go to? And in many instances, they are so dependent on the husband or on that particular home, as it were. Where do they go to? I mean, it's grossly unfair that some men will show that kind of insensitivity. But there are three things that can be done. Of course, you seek Allah's guidance. Secondly, someone that knows him very well could intervene, or sometimes you need to assert yourself and say, you know what, we need to talk about this because you are really humiliating me and demeaning me. It has to be done. Otherwise, if it's not done, then you must be able to enjoy it for the rest of your life.
Sure. Somebody asks, I feel, one second. I feel like my husband doesn't respect how I feel. When I'm asleep, he wants to be intimate with me. If I say no, I'm tired, or if he can wait until I am awake. Is this wrong? He believes that I'm rejecting him. I'm half asleep. Should he not understand this? And how are we supposed to move forward with this?
Yeah, I think the important thing, there are three things that I recommend for each family, right? One is that you need to have a routine, Monday to Sunday, without it being prescriptive. You need to have family values and family goals. So I think it's important, whilst I do not recommend that she denies her husband the issue of intimacy, at the same token, I think the man must also show sensitivity in terms of making sure that he makes the overture to his wife when his wife is wide awake and receptive to him.
Shukran. How do I speak to someone who I know won't be receptive to what I'm saying, or someone who downplays my feelings?
You see, one of the things is you do not get married to be happy. You are married and you are happy to get married. There is a difference. Secondly, when you got low self-esteem, you will require constant validation, constant affirmation, constant encouragement. And otherwise, what happens that you would allow your partner, as much as marriage is a sacred institution, to impact on your attitude and everything else that goes with it. But if there is a recurring pattern, it has to be addressed. It must be addressed. It really, really, it's hurtful when you hear so many of them go through these situations.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In my marriage, we have had bad communication. My partner always wants to be heard, obeyed. My opinion does not matter in every aspect of our marriage, and I'm slowly being disconnected to him because of that. I find him boring and selfish. Sorry, it just moved. And then the question is, one second. It's always about how to make him happy, and Jannah lies under his feet. So I'm guessing the person wants advice on how to move forward with this person, with the marriage when the husband is being this way.
Yeah, one of the things that we got to learn in life, right? If you are staying in the marriage, then you got to learn to enjoy it and have coping skills. Do not allow his attitude to consume you. You must be able to negotiate around it. But the critical thing is this, that, it has to be addressed. It must be addressed. And you got to use a lot of wisdom how you do that, but it cannot be ignored, because the home is supposed to be a haven, supposed to be the happiest place in the world.
Shukran. Maybe I'll just add to that couples counseling could also be helpful. Again, of course, if both parties are willing to go. Somebody asks, what happens if you have a husband who doesn't practice Islam and you are someone who wants your children to learn?
Yeah, I see, again, that question ought to have been asked before you marry, to find out what his level of spirituality. He might say to you, you know what, I read Jummah and I'm happy. And if you are reading 5 times a day Salah, no matter what your feelings are for that person, then I think then you need to accept responsibility for that. Sometimes what happens, we think we are reformers. He said, no, he loves me so much, I'm sure I'm going to be a change agent. You cannot change anyone except yourself. And you pray, inshallah, if you're in that situation, that Allah guides him.
Shukran. Somebody asks, can we contact Mr. Khamissa for resolutions?
Yes, you can, anytime.
Okay, shukran. So maybe just to the person who asked, please message our Muslims Connected WhatsApp number, and we will provide you with the contact detail. Somebody asks, advice for siblings who don't see eye to eye.
Yeah, you know what? You see, firstly, when it comes to your kids, right, you treat them not equally, but with equity. Everyone is different. You've got to understand different personalities. I'm not too sure they're speaking about the children who are siblings, or they're speaking about themselves and the brothers and the sisters. Whatever it is, you've got to understand each other's nature and able to deal with them according to their understanding and what makes them happy. And that's important, And if you adopt if you become pontificatory and adopt a condescending attitude, then it'll be very, very problematic.
Shukran. Advice for strained relationship with a mother after trying and knowing that the mother role is important.
Just repeat that, please.
Do you have any advice for how, I think she's asking how to deal with a strained relationship with her mother?
I think, when it comes to those things, you got to take that active step. If you made a mistake, seek forgiveness. You mustn't think in your mind, well, if I'm going to make that overture, she might reject me. It's okay. Allah is a witness. You went there with a sincere heart. Allah forbid that you did not make that overture. She passes away, and then you're crying in the grave, right? You're crying. And the tears of regret are more painful than the tears of sadness.
Shukran. Somebody asks, do you have any organizations or suggestions for coaching and mentorship?
They can contact me and I would guide them.
Okay. How to deal with toxic relatives who never want to be corrected or admit being wrong?
Yeah, that's fine. You know what? If some of them are entrenched, they're toxic, you just be civil, be polite. Do not allow people to affect you. I'll give you an example. I'll just give you an example. Right. Where I'm staying, you drive to your apartment and you meet your neighbors there when they walk past or they drive past. So one of my neighbors a few years ago stopped talking to me for no reason. But whenever I saw him, I stopped the car and I greeted him and his wife, and they never greeted me back. So my wife said to me, why are you being so silly? He said, why? What do you mean? He said, they're not speaking to you. I said, I know, but I'm speaking to them. The moment you allow people's behavior to affect you, then it's problematic. You should not. You must be a polite self. Our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the story about the lady throwing dirt on him, what was his response? The day she did not. He was concerned about her well-being. And this is it. This is it. Once you become vindictive and spiteful, that will be problematic.
Shukran for that. I think that's really an important point that, we cannot control other people, but we can control ourselves and how we react and respond to others. Somebody asks how to speak to a spouse who is not on the same page as you or low self-esteem. I'm not sure if they mean they have low self-esteem or the spouse has low self-esteem, but how to speak to a spouse who's not on the same page as you.
You know what? The whole thing is that you're going to speak to someone to their own understanding, right? And after all, I'm not saying that you pack up and go or whatever, right? I think you should be able to manage it. You need to also remember, and one thing I want to say this to my beloved sisters, that you are essentially also the ummati of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that you are ummati of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you also have a responsibility to play. You're not only defined by your marriage, you're not defined by your family, you're not defined by your neighborhood, you are defined by the fact that you're part of the ummati of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you also got to play your part in contributing to that.
Shukran for that. Somebody asks how to solve a conflict, but does it again and again.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. It was muffled a bit in the beginning. Could you repeat that, please? Could you repeat that? Hello?
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. How to solve a conflict involving your wife being disrespectful towards you and then saying, I didn't mean it, but they do it again and again.
Yeah. So I think, it's fine if people make a mistake. It's fine. But if it's done repeatedly, then it shows that there's no respect. Now, so you got to find out what are the trigger points, what are the underlying reasons for that kind of behavior. And one of the things that I often recommend when it comes to marriage, I tell people, if you want your husband to die for you, respect him and his whole family. And you want the woman to die for you, be romantic, affectionate, caring, and loving. That's what you need to do.
Shukran. How does an adult develop EQ if he didn't learn this when he was young?
Yes, it's something that you're never too late to learn. You got to go to people, help, and I can help him or her. It's about, recognizing who you are, recognizing what you need to do differently. And once you do that, you'll see a difference, inshallah.
Shukran. My husband and I struggle to communicate serious issues, but he doesn't think we have a problem. Problems often get brushed under the carpet and I feel unheard. How do we overcome this?
I think, at an appropriate time, you need to confront him about it and say, this is what you feel, and to speak about it. And once you do that, it will make a very, very big difference. And you cannot ignore it. And I say to my beloved sisters, you've got to assert yourself and talk about issues that pain you.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I'm married for 5 years, but for the last 2 years of my marriage went on a down low. My husband always struggles to communicate and I always nagged for communication and time together. Found out he cheated, so my trust and heart is broken. whenever we communicate, I try to calm myself down, but sometimes I start to shout, and most times never a solution. I'm trying to trust again and invest into the marriage, and I see the effort from him as well. Just how do I deal with speaking about the past and how he has feelings for another woman? How do I or we try to move forward from this?
You see, one of the things that you've got to bear in mind that infidelity has become a real issue in our community. And you find there's a tendency, if the husband has been guilty of it, he would not want to speak about it. And the woman on the other extreme, she would want to know every little detail that goes on. And my own view is this: if he shows a true remorse, right, and he has turned to Allah and he has shown his attitude in the marriage has changed, then you've got to support him. You know, prying itself regarding that issue may not necessarily bring closure. Sometimes the details might exacerbate that relationship. But it's important, the husbands need to understand that when you do something like this, you cannot blame your spouse for interrogating you and asking you questions.
Shukran for that. My daughter, 4, and husband are always demanding my attention at the same time. It's as if it's a competition. My husband feels I have no time to listen to him. This causes a lot of frustration in him. Yes, how to deal with that?
Yeah, you see, that's why, you see, once you have a daily routine when you're sharing household chores, you'll understand. I know lots of men, they feel a sense of insecurity when the mother is trying to look after the kids and they feel neglected. It's almost like competing with the children. It's also the issue of self-esteem, you see.
Okay, shukran. I think this is the same person that's continuing on. So she's saying, one second, I feel he's always unhappy with me, especially in a physical side. His demand is very high. What can I do?
I think they need to go for therapy. They need to speak about it and allow someone that's objective to guide them and to help them. There are always answers to these things, because in the end, otherwise you'll be suffering silently, and that will bring about lots of resentment.
Shukran. Moment. My husband is always tired. Sometimes he doesn't want to talk. He just wants to be by himself. Should I respect his decision, or does he need help?
No, I think, to be fair, whilst life can be frenetic and stressful, I think it's important to understand that when you come home, you've got to, therefore, I always speak about this routine. And part of the routine is when you come home and have a conversation with your wife after you have unwound and you relax, to talk about your day and to share each other's day.
Shukran. What can I do when my husband can't accept my past?
I mean, in the end, so that ought to have been spoken about before you got married, you see.
Yeah.
And now that you are married, you got to just accept it and deal with it. And the past is a point of reference, not residence. And most people have a past. Therefore, they say every saint had a past and every sinner has a future.
Shukran. My husband can't express himself emotionally, and it has a toll on our marriage. Any advice?
Remember, that is a clarion call from most of our sisters. This is a call they make regarding all their husbands. So I think, men must understand how important it is to connect with the spouses, to have a conversation, and to be present.
Shukran. How can I correct my self-esteem?
I think you need to recognize that you're a unique creation of Allah. You need to, whenever you are in company, learn to express your opinion. Your opinions are important. In the end, do not become a pleaser and a appeaser. Assert yourself and begin to love yourself. Therefore, the dua you're supposed to make, you look at the mirror, say, Ya Allah, you made me beautiful outside, also make me beautiful inside.
How do you deal with someone who is angry at one point with you, belittles and swears or fights with you, and then a few minutes later will expect to be intimate when they haven't even apologized or dealt with what just happened?
Yeah, they need help, they need guidance regarding their temperament. They also need to show far greater sensitivity. They need to understand the impact of the words. And sadly, this is something that they need to do, but many of them never do that. I think they need to see a counselor who will give them the right kind of advice.
Shukran. How do you deal when the conflict stems from issues with your in-laws? Just one moment. How do you deal when the conflict stems with issues stemming from your in-laws? Just lost it again. However, your husband cannot stand up for you or handle the situation with his family. Your husband's lack of bravery is the reason for the conflict. How do you handle this?
Yeah, you see, the issues with your in-laws is a very, very sensitive thing. If it is an issue that is serious enough, then the husband needs to assert himself with the idea of healing it, not so much creating an adversarial relationship between his family and his spouse. So I think that's important, that needs to be done. But in the same token, I think the individual must reflect and say, listen, how serious is this issue? Am I overreacting? Is it something that is debilitating, something that affects me so much that I need to do something about it?
Shukran. How do you recommend raising self-esteem to have a good and healthy esteem in relationships?
I think the whole thing is you got to love yourself, you got to believe in yourself, you got to develop yourself, you got to also be multi-skilled, and in the end, it comes from self-acceptance. And remember this, the other person is not necessarily better than you, but is different from you. Self-esteem, I want to remind people, is basically recognizing that you are a unique creation of Allah.
Shukran. 1 second. Advice on how to keep mother-in-law or in-laws out of conflicts or decision-making in their son's marriage.
Just repeat that, please.
This person is wanting advice on how to keep the mother-in-law or all the in-laws out of conflicts and out of decision-making in the marriage.
Yeah, I think it's basically that discussion ought to take place before you marry. And the whole thing about premarital conversation is that discussion should not only take place between the two individuals, but also the respective in-laws about what the role must be supported. It must not become overzealous and become interfering. So that discussion ought to take place before that.
Good. I'll just add maybe, boundaries as well, since they are, already married and having to deal with it, just like setting boundaries on this is their marriage and like, the in-laws is not part of the couple. So the next question is, I'm 21 and married for about a year now. I absolutely cannot handle my husband's loud, rowdy, out there character, as it's not a good representation of Islam. I'm told I need to be patient, but I cannot stay in a toxic relationship for the sake of my mental health. My parents' household is even more toxic though. I would love to live alone, but this is not ideal for a young Muslim woman. What do I do?
Well, I think then they need to go for counseling, you see. That's very, very important. I think that personality trait, whatever, ought to have been observed, or you need to have found that out before you marry the individual. Now, to ask a person to change his personality is an issue. But if you want him to be quieten him down a bit, that's I don't think there's an issue. If he loves you enough, he would do that.
Shukran. Please, can you give advice on how to say no to something you do not want to do? I always feel caught in a corner and agree to do things, but actually angry and hateful towards the person. How do I politely decline to assist a person?
Yeah, that's it. If you've got high self-esteem, you will never find it difficult to say no. So I think you got to learn, do it, and then you see you'll feel a sense of liberation.
Shukran. Salams, my spouse is constantly in her phone, even neglecting her kids. What do I do?
I think that's why, again, the whole issue of a daily routine, and part of the routine would be about the use of social media and our phones. And because the phone can be very, very intrusive when it comes to the marriage.
Shukran. My husband is so sensitive that when I express my feelings, even in a beautiful manner, he gets offended. What to do?
Okay, could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Right? Could you WhatsApp me all these questions, right?
Yes.
Right? Oh, how am I going to do that?
Or email? Can we email?
Yeah, email it, right? Because I would have to go now, right?
Okay.
I would like the other thing that can be done is when we're having the next program,
Yes.
those questions that are outstanding,
Yes.
I could respond to it then, you know.
Okay.
Right? If others want my advice, you can give them my number, right? They can phone me tomorrow, not today, right? You have my number, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, you can put it up there. I don't mind they phone me up. And I want to reassure everyone, I do not charge at all for my consult. It's free of charge, you know. So anyway, I want to say Jazakumullah. I have to go.
Sure,
Right.
not a problem. Jazakallah khair to you.
And I want all of you to remember my mother-in-law is 95 years old. She fell, she broke her femur. She's not well at all. So she's here at home. And make dua that Allah gives her complete shifa. And to all of you, Jazakumullah, always enjoy participation. So you would arrange it, right? Would you do that?
Yes, yes, we will do.
Okay.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Ameen. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
Yeah, why don't you try to answer those questions?
Okay, I can do that.
I think you should do that, right? Okay. Yeah, I think you do a competent job.
Okay, I
right,
will do. Okay, you can hold on. I was like, okay, so I will go through the rest of the questions. There are a few people putting up their hand, so please note that we're not taking questions that way. You need to put the questions in the chat box. And I will answer the questions. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Wasfiya Al-Talib, and I am the wife of Masood Hayat, who is the founder of Muslims Connected. I graduated in counseling and psychology from the South African College of Applied Psychology. So I did cover topics like self-esteem and relationships and so forth. And I will be pursuing my postgraduate studies in the near future. So please make dua that I get accepted firstly for my postgrad studies and succeed in that. I mean, okay, so I will just go through the rest of the questions. I'll also send it to Uncle Edris. If anyone else wants to contact him, as you know, you are more than welcome to do so. Okay, so I think let me just give me a moment to see where we got up until. Okay, so the question is, I struggle in my marriage because my wife spends a lot of time with social media, no quality time. She doesn't understand that's wasting time. So that's why I feel not respected. Okay, so firstly, it's your opinion that she's wasting time. Like to her, maybe she doesn't feel like she's wasting time. Social media, spending a lot of time on social media can have a lot of other underlying reasons. Maybe she's avoiding you, maybe she's avoiding other things, maybe it's just an escape. There could be many reasons why she's spending such a lot of time on social media. So the two of you do need to take some time out and just speak about, express how you feel to her, like in a time that's appropriate. Like Dr. Uncle Edris said, choose an appropriate time, not while you're in the bedroom. Choose a time that's she's not busy with other things, because obviously she's not going to respond very well. So find a good time to approach her and be like, I just would like to speak to you about something. I kind of noticed that And again, like he said, don't say you do this. Don't say you spend a lot of time on social media and you disrespecting me. Rather say, I feel disrespected and I feel neglected when you spend so much time, on your phone. And are you aware of that? Or and then she'll probably come up with express how she feels about maybe things that you are doing, that is bringing about that. So that will lead to a very interesting discussion between the two of you. Again, like you mentioned as well earlier, having a routine. I would say even not a routine, but just like a general time where you go to sleep at the same time, for example, or you have meal times together, for at least one meal together, for example, maybe supper, and then over supper you can maybe discuss your day and have some quality time over there. And if that's not possible, give yourselves at least like half an hour, when you get into bed, just to have that quality time before you go to sleep, where you just connect and discuss how your day went and bring up, if you feel that's an appropriate time, how you are feeling. And again, don't accuse, but rather make it about you and your needs. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. Okay, give me one moment. I'm just needing to get to the next question, because every time somebody asks something, it just goes right to the top again. Okay, the next question is, I struggle in my marriage. Oh no, sorry, I answered that one. Somebody asks, Shukran so much for this talk. I have some siblings who like to make negative comments. What do I do in this situation? So I think it's important to express how you feel, to say that, to address the situation with them and be like, I don't appreciate that comment. I mean, I've had to do this myself in my own life at certain points, to say, you know what, you said what you said now, the comment that you made about me is actually not polite, and actually find it disrespectful, and actually feel hurt by that. And then, sometimes, and then they might say something like, oh, it's just joking. And then you could be like, no, that's not funny. Like, something that is hurtful to me is actually not funny. But make sure you are in a space where you can, it's an appropriate time, firstly, for that person, and you are in a calm state yourself and are able to address it in a calm manner, and you're not going to get all worked up, and the issue's not going to escalate. But it is important to express how you feel to your siblings when they make those negative comments. I would say address it in the moment, so that you don't just leave it, and then, because if you're just going to leave it, they're going to think, oh, that's acceptable, I can just carry on doing that. The next question is, please give examples of how to respect the husband and how to love the wife. Shukran. There is a brilliant book that I would recommend you to read. It's called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. So this is the book explains that each of us have a dominant love language, and those are words of affirmation, the giving of gifts, acts of service, physical touch, and there's one more that doesn't come to mind right now, but if you look up the book and find it, you will, it will cover all of them. If somebody knows it, you can just type it in the form, or maybe I'll just look it up right now. So the reason why I'm recommending this book is because it will tell you how to love or how to respect your partner in their love language, because like they literally are love languages. It's like telling somebody in Chinese, I love you. If they don't understand, then you think that you're expressing your love to that person, but that's not the language that they speak, so they actually don't understand it. The book really gives you examples. So just, yes, I got the 5 love languages. So they are words of affirmation, quality time, that's one I was missing, physical touch, acts of service, and receiving gifts. So once you know what your partner's love language is, you can show that love and show that respect in a language that they understand. So I could maybe just give a quick one just between my husband and I, because I mean, that's the only married since I'm married. So for me, it's words of affirmation. So an example would be my husband just saying, you're so beautiful, or I love your body, you really have a perfect body, things like that. Just like really simple statements that are so simple for him to say, but really mean the world to me, because that's my love language. And for him, his love language is acts of service. So if I just make him a meal, something simple for me, but for him, because he really appreciates because his love language is acts of service, he really appreciates it, and that's how he interprets love. So for example, if I clean the kitchen or clean the lounge or just like tidy the room or any of those things that may seem like, oh well, they're just chores and you kind of supposed to do them anyway. So I'm being someone who doesn't particularly enjoy doing those things. So when I do those things, and then he notices and he really does appreciate it. So those are just some examples. Really, the love languages I would recommend to every single married couple. There are actually different versions of this book. So there's versions for like parents and children as well, which I think would be very helpful for those of you who have children. Okay, so let me get to the next question. With regards to respecting the husband, I would add as well to not raise your voice ever, which sometimes can be difficult to do, especially when you feel like you're not being heard, and you feel frustrated. You think that by raising your voice you are making them hear you clearer, but actually it just has a very negative effect, and the husband immediately feels disrespectful. So that's disrespected rather. So that's one thing you really want to avoid. You really want to avoid raising voice. The next question is, I find myself not bringing up issues as it really just goes through one ear and out the other. How to deal with a husband filled with arrogance and a fat ego. The person, the arrogance and the fat ego, that sounds a little bit like he's narcissistic. I mean, I can't diagnose narcissistic personality disorder just based on, you saying that he's arrogant and has a fat ego, but this person sounds like they may have traits of narcissism in them. So I would recommend that you look up narcissism and look up also how to deal with narcissists. And I hope that you find that helpful, because often narcissists just care about their own selves and what their needs and their feelings, and they don't care about anybody else. So like you said, it's not going to help no matter how much you express yourself to them, because they're just not going to, they're just not going to care, basically. And then you need to decide whether that's going to be something that you can continue to live with. I would suggest that you seek couples counseling. If that's something he's going to agree to, that would be great. And if not, like I said, you have to decide if that's something you want to live with, you can live with or not. And the next question is, I find myself, next one. I'm not a very romantic person and can't cuddle for too long. How do I learn to become romantic towards my wife? I'm not very social as a person, but I need to make my wife feel more at ease. Okay. So thank you for asking this question firstly. So as you've heard from Uncle Edris, being romantic to your wife is incredibly important, because to her, that's how she interprets love. Okay, and romantic can be in different ways. It doesn't just have to be cuddling, like you mentioned. It could be writing a note. That doesn't require any cuddling from you at all. It could be writing a love note or a love letter, or buying her a card, or buying a teddy bear, or buying roses. Or there are other ways of being romantic. Like if you Google search romantic things to do for my wife, you will find so many ideas. So I suggest you do that. I would also suggest, as I mentioned earlier, reading or looking up the 5 love languages and finding out what her love language is. And then you can express that love to her in her love language. So if it is that her love language is physical touch and you're not able to provide that, or you don't feel comfortable doing it, then tell yourself, look, I don't particularly enjoy doing this. You can think to yourself, I don't particularly enjoy doing this, but I'm doing this for her, to express my love to her, and like you said, to make her feel safe, to make her feel comfortable. Sometimes in marriage we do have to do things that we don't particularly enjoy. Like I mentioned, I don't particularly enjoy cleaning and cooking and those things, but if I know that my husband appreciates those things, then that's what I tell myself. I'm like, well, I don't particularly enjoy doing this, but if this is what's going to bring joy to my husband and happiness to him. And over and above that, doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So keeping Allah at the center of it. So Allah, you reward me for doing this, for whatever it is that you're doing. When you make that intention, then Allah will make it easy for you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for doing that. If you don't make the intention that it's for the sake of Allah, then your efforts may be futile. Okay. Give me 1 second and I will get to the next question. Okay, I and my wife love each other, but sometimes she is disrespectful towards me. Again, this keeps on moving. I'm so sorry about that. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I and my wife love each other, but sometimes she's disrespectful towards me, and that makes my love go down and increases my bitterness towards her. What can I do? Okay. So again, why you kind of have to look at like why is she being disrespectful towards you? I don't think she's being disrespectful towards you for the sake of it. I think that there may be something that she's not receiving from you. So maybe she feels like she's not heard. Maybe she feels like she's being neglected. Maybe she feels like you're disrespecting her in some way. Okay, so you have to come down. You have to find the root cause of her disrespect. Because again, like I said, I highly doubt that she's being disrespectful for the sake of being disrespectful. Maybe have that chat like I advised earlier with one of the other couples, one of the other questions. Find that time to just like speak about get comfortable and with each other, and choose a suitable time when you're both in a good mood, and just talk about other things and get comfortable, and then bring up the issue of what do you need from me? Sometimes maybe that's a question you've never even asked each other, like what do you need from me in order for you to feel heard, feel happy, feel respected, feel loved in this marriage? So you ask that from each other. Okay, and if you feel like you can't say it to each other, then suggest that you write it down to each other. Okay, so you write down, maybe just limit the list to, let's say, 5 things. What are 5 things that I'm doing right in this marriage, or 5 things? Yes, to balance them out, like Uncle Edris mentioned earlier as well. We don't want to just ask what are all the things that I'm not doing, what are all the things that are causing you frustration in the marriage? So that is an important question, like I said, so we can get to the root of where is this disrespect coming from. And at the same time, after working through that, we also want to appreciate the good, because as you mentioned, you do love each other. So let's express through words or writing down as well, what are the ways that this marriage is working, what are ways that we are expressing love to each other in this marriage, and so on and so forth. Okay, I will get to the next question now. My husband always seeks support and validation from his sister and says, I never support him, but how do I know if he's going through something if he never talks to me about his day or what he's going through? It sounds to me like there is a disconnect in this marriage between the husband and the wife, because the husband is not feeling comfortable to go to his wife and speak about these things. He's feeling more comfortable to speak to his sister. So again, there are some tough conversations that need to happen between many people that I hope will come about after this webinar, inshallah. That's a tough conversation that needs to be had. We need to also find out why doesn't he feel comfortable enough to speak to you about his day or speak to you about his concerns and his issues? Is it that maybe he feels that if he tells you, you're going to just explode, you're going to react in a big way, you're going to get stressed out, and he doesn't want that? Okay, I'm just giving an example. So there could be an array of reasons why he's not expressing himself to you, and rather feels more comfortable speaking to his sister. So you need to express that to him and be like, I feel left out when you speak to your sister about your whatever it is, and I'm your wife and I want to support you and I want to be there for you, and say, but I can't really be there for you if you're not letting me in. and maybe ask, what is it that is holding you back from expressing yourself to me? What is keeping you away from me? So it seems almost like there's this barrier between you, and you need to unveil that barrier, remove that barrier first to find out what is causing that barrier, what that barrier is. So that's a tough conversation that needs to be had. Okay, so I will get to the next question now. Okay, my husband's family thinks that he's flawless. Therefore, whenever my husband and I argue, I'm told to be patient. I'm tired of his bad character. What do I do? Okay, so it seems, so you're saying that whenever my husband and I argue, I'm told to be patient. So is it his family that's telling you to be patient, or who is it that's telling you to be patient? I think that's not being made clear. And so it seems like you're going to his family about him, like his family is not the people you should be going to. I would suggest that you seek couples therapy, couples counseling, for you to sort your issues out. Allah SWT says and explains to us in the Quran that when there are issues, this is obviously when things escalate to the point of potential separation, that there's someone from his family and someone from your family, and they arbitrate in that way. So I'm just trying to understand, is it why it is that it's his family that you're going to complain about him? You need to have a neutral person, not his family, because maybe you're expecting his family to be on your side. Like, it's kind of more obvious that they'll be on his side because like it's their son, right? And again, so I would suggest that you go through couples counseling. Hopefully he is willing to do that and work out those issues. And if not, then you do have to consider, do I want to continue to live with this person with bad character, or is it something that I actually can't live with and would rather be happier on my own? But you have to first go through all the steps. So speaking to him directly first, and trying to get him on the same page, as I've advised with other couples. Find a suitable time, a suitable opportunity, where you're both in a good time and space, mental space, physical space, emotional space, that you can speak to each other and hear each other out. And then the next step would be your couples counseling, and then and don't just go for one session and be like, oh, like we went and like it doesn't work. Like, these things take time, so you have to give it the time that it deserves. This is your marriage that you are working on, and so take those steps up until you reach a solution, or you reach a point where he understands where he may be behaving inappropriately or in a way that's not acceptable, and he changes. Or, like I said, if he just doesn't change and you still perceive that behavior as bad behavior that you cannot accept, then you need to take the appropriate measures, or the appropriate decisions rather. My wife constantly wants her to, okay, let me just start this question again. The question is, my wife constantly wants her mother to be with us on our holidays. How does one deal with it? Her mother always expects from me, but she has sons who can work but are lazy. So this is where boundaries come into play. This is what I kind of added onto one of the other answers that were asked earlier. So, sorry, before I go on, I don't know why. I hope you all are seeing me and hearing me clearly, because in my screen, I'm seeing somebody's name. Anyway, I'm just going to carry on. So this is where boundaries come into play. Boundaries means, like, if you think of a boundary, like a wall around your house that separates your house from the street and separates your house from your neighbor's house. So that wall is like a very clear boundary that this is our space, like we do whatever we want in this space. And on the other side of the wall, that is your house, you do whatever you want to do. And it seems like, you and your spouse, you and your wife are not on the same page, because you feel like that's a boundary being crossed. Like, this is my marriage. I want to go. I'm only married to my wife. I'm not married to a mother. I want to go on holiday alone with her. I do not want a mother to be there. But she obviously feels otherwise. So firstly, that's a conversation you need to have with her about boundaries, about, what this is. I'm married to you. I want to go on holiday with you. As much as I respect your mother, as much as I think, as much as I, love and respect her as your mother, I would prefer to go on holiday alone with you. So just be careful about how you word it and not say anything negative about her mother, because obviously she would react and she would take things badly if you are going to start saying negative things if you start going to say negative things about her mother. Then there's the other issue that you brought up about her mother expecting from you when she has sons, and who you are saying that, they can work, but they are lazy. So again, it comes down to boundaries that, yes, anybody can expect from you, but it's up to you to either give into that expectation, or to refuse that. It's up to you to either give or to decide not to give, and that's your decision. If you feel like you want to give, then you give with the right intention for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will be rewarded for that. And if you feel like you actually don't want to give her, maybe you have your own family members who I need, then you simply refuse and you simply explain that, I actually have other financial priorities and I'm unable to provide for you as well. It's really as clear and as simple as that. It really comes down to having those tough conversations. And just to add as well, it might seem really, really daunting to begin with, really daunting to have these difficult conversations. But once you do have them, things will be so much lighter afterwards. Sorry about that. So the next question is, my husband often accuses me of looking at other men, even if I'm just looking at a wall. Counseling is out of the question because he's not interested. What can I do for my mental health? Okay, this is rather problematic. And you've mentioned that counseling is out of the question. So what can you do for your mental health? So you go for counseling for your mental health, so you can learn how to deal with him. And again, it might eventually come down to, can I continue to live with this person and his behavior, or is it actually something that I cannot live with and I cannot accept? But in the meantime, you can go for counseling for your mental health, so you can learn how to set boundaries, so you can learn how to communicate better, so you can work on raising your self-esteem in order to deal with him better, to learn how to respond to him. Okay. And it does sound like you may have low self-esteem and not know how to respond to that, because as someone with high self-esteem, for a person who has high self-esteem, if their husband were to accuse them of that, like that would just not go down at all. It would be nipped in the bud and stop there. So this is something that sounds to me like it's been going on continuously. So it's definitely something that needs to be dealt with. Okay. Somebody asks, what to do when expressing to siblings how you really feel is a means of more hurt as they do it more. Okay, I'm not understanding the question, so I'm just going to read it again. What to do when expressing to siblings how you really feel is a means of more hurt as they do it more. Okay. Oh, okay. I think I'm understanding. So maybe what this person is saying is when you tell your siblings, when you say X, Y, Z, it hurts me, and then they just end up doing it more. That is horrible. That is disgusting behavior. And that is unacceptable. So that's when you need to set firmer boundaries. They are toxic people, even though they are your siblings. You do not have to interact with them. You do not have to be in their space. I don't know what your living situation is. I guess if you're living in the same house as them, it can be rather challenging. So if you are living in the same house as them and you cannot avoid them, then you would have to set stronger boundaries and work on raising your self-esteem. Because as someone with high self-esteem, you do not accept anybody to speak to you like that, and you need to be firm with them that way, and speak in such a tone that they will take you seriously and they will not do that again. If there are people who are not living with you, then again, like I said, you can be polite and respect them and interact with them from a distance, or have the common courtesy and have the minimal interaction. I'm not saying to cut them off by any means, but you do not have to. They do not have to be part of in your space all the time. Again, I don't know what the living situation is, so that's why I just gave both scenarios. Okay, let me look at the next question. Okay, how do you deal with your partner watching porn and just trying to make them understand that they're making me feel like nothing? Again, this is another tough conversation that needs to be had. This is something that is unfortunately plaguing many marriages, both Muslim marriages and non-Muslim marriages alike. Porn, it can be an addiction. I'm not saying it is an addiction in your partner's case, but it seems like it is an addiction because it sounds like it's something that didn't just happen once, that is continuing to happen by the sounds of your question. So he needs to seek help. He needs to first admit to what he's doing, and he needs to seek help that only he can do. There are support groups out there for it. There is counseling available for it, there's coaching available for it, and there are support groups available for porn addiction. There's a specific name for the broader addiction. It's called Love and Sex Addiction. So there's actually Love and Sex Addiction Anonymous that helps people with this particular issue. And for you, of course, it can make you feel like nothing because you feel like he'd much rather watch a screen than like watch you, who's like a physical person right there. Nobody can make you feel anyway. You can allow that to make you feel like nothing, or you can not allow it to make you feel like nothing. So the important part here for you, in the event that your partner doesn't want to, do anything, you can work on yourself. You can work on raising your self-esteem and your self-worth so that nothing outside of yourself makes you feel like nothing. Okay, because once you know your worth, once you have high self-worth, nothing anybody says or does can take that away from you. I'm going to get to the next question. Mine and my husband's love languages are both physical touch, therefore intimacy is great. However, the rest of the day is horrible due to us having issues with each other's character. I'm not sure how solvable it is, as it's how our personality is. What to do? Okay, so again, it's about having those tough conversations and just expressing, be specific. So you can't just say, oh, it's our characters, or Like, that's just too vague. Like, I can't really help you if you just say, oh, you both, that everything's horrible because because of our characters. Like, you kind of need to, maybe it's too much to express, to type out in the question box. But what you could do is express to each other. And again, like I said, be specific. So you can't just say, oh, you a horrible person, or you just do this and you just do that, or we just don't get along, we just clash all the time. Like, that really is not going to help very much. You need to be specific about, I find, and again, don't accuse the other person, like Uncle Edris said, come from I. So I feel disrespected when you say X, Y, Z. I feel unheard when you sit on your phone while I'm talking to you. I feel like you don't care about me when you don't pick up after yourself. Whatever, I'm just giving like little examples, but I would say write them down for yourself first. Okay, and then you can come to the conversation with the things that you've listed down, so that you can come to that conversation cool, calm, and collected, knowing exactly what it is. And like I said, you're not just like vague and like throwing out like accusations, in these broad general terms. And then, it might not be as horrible, as in like, it might not be as disastrous as you think it is when you pinpoint what those specific issues are. And so you write those things down, you ask him to write what his grievances are, and then you come together and be like, and try and work it out. So like, how can we help one another in this marriage, in this home, to create a harmonious marriage? So first try to work things out like that on your own. If it's not, if it escalates or gets out of hand or doesn't really go very well, the next step would be to go for couples therapy, couples counseling. I will get to the next question in a moment. How to balance studies and housewife responsibilities. Okay, so this question really is not related to the topic, so I'm not going to be answering it. The next question is, how do we deal with a spouse with an entrenched attitude? No matter how diplomatically and effectively I communicate issues that cause conflict in our marriage, he just remains silent every time, never disagreeing or agreeing, causing great frustration. Okay, so I'm glad that you mentioned that, you have tried to diplomatically and effectively communicate what these issues are. Okay, and you're saying that he's just like not participating. And I understand that must be very frustrating. Go for couples therapy, go for couples counseling. Or if that's something where he's not gonna, he's just not gonna do, he just doesn't agree to that either, find a neutral party, a neutral person. Okay, so I would not really suggest somebody from his family or one of his friends, that's gonna be biased, where they are, would most likely be on his side. So you've got to find somebody in the community, an elderly person, a respected person in the community, or a mutual friend that would be neutral. Somebody else who can be there and who can facilitate that conversation, because clearly this conversation is just not happening, when it's just the two of you on your own. The next question is, both myself and my husband talk much, but do little action on what we talk about. This is a major issue as it stunts our growth in all facets of our life. How do we overcome this? I would really highly recommend getting a life coach. Because when you have a life coach, that life coach will hold you accountable to doing those things. So trust me, you're not alone on this. I think the vast majority of us can relate to this, where we know we have a lot of room for improvement. We might know exactly how we can improve. We might read self-help books. We might, go to seminars and conferences and, all of these things. But when it comes to taking action, very little is actually done. Okay, so that's why I said, when you have that accountability from a life coach, you will definitely see that progress that you want to see in your relationship. So you can either both go together to a life coach if you find somebody who is maybe a relationship coach, or you can just each have your own separate life coaches for you and have your own, be on your own journeys of self-help and self-growth. And by you both working on your own selves, your marriage will blossom and benefit from that, inshallah. I will get to the next question now. Okay. How do you manage your relationship with your mother-in-law who constantly crosses your boundaries? So this again comes down to not just setting boundaries, but also preserving those boundaries. Okay, so sometimes initially it's good enough just to set the boundary, but sometimes, like in this case, when you're mentioning that this person is actually crossing the boundary, you need to then preserve that boundary. Okay, so I don't know, I can maybe make up an example. So maybe the mother-in-law comes over without any announcement, just like at any random time when you're actually busy and would not appreciate her being there right then. And maybe you've mentioned to her before already, would you, I would really appreciate it if you message me or just give me a call before you come around so that I can know that you can, so that I know that I can expect you. So say you've done that and she still does it. Remind her the next time she comes. It's so great to see you, but I'm terribly busy with the bath time right now and I really can't see to you. And as I mentioned before, I'd really appreciate it if you just gave me sent a message or gave a call and just checked in whether it would be a good time to come around right now. So that's just an example of setting a boundary and preserving a boundary. Again, if you read up about boundaries, how to set them, how to preserve them, you would benefit from that. You can find stuff online if you just search for that. Let's go on. Both myself and, I answered that one already. Next one, conversations need to happen between spouses, but nothing moves forward after it happens. How to avoid this from happening? So again, like I gave the advice with the couple about the coaching for that accountability. In this case, again, it seems like, you need that third party for that accountability. And like I said before as well, don't just go for one session and then you say, oh, it doesn't work, like we tried and it doesn't work. Like you can't just go for one session and then like expect miracles to happen. Like go for one, just maybe give yourself 10 weeks, for example, or 12 weeks. So once a week for 12 weeks, that's what we are dedicating to, or, that's what we are dedicating towards our marriage. So, and then every week, so what happens is if you do it as a weekly thing, the counselor is obviously going to ask you each week, so, what happened during the past week, ask you maybe for examples, and, just you subconsciously, by you knowing that you're going to have a session next week, and you're going to most likely be asked about how whatever situation played out, you are going to improve because that counseling session is a means of accountability. So just a note on like marriage counseling, it's not the place that you should go to just when your marriage is falling apart. Like you could go for marriage counseling when you have a perfectly healthy marriage and you just want to improve on it. So don't think that maybe people think that marriage counseling is just for when you're on the edge of divorce and then you want to go and try and save your marriage, when it might potentially be too late. So you don't have to wait until you get to that point. You can go at the point that you are at right now. And there's absolutely no shame or harm in going. Instead, they can actually just be benefit. I will go on to the next question now. When I express how I feel to my husband, which may be something negative, he says I'm always negative. This causes me to suppress my feelings and I often feel blank. What advice can you suggest? Okay. I can't say whether you are a negative person or not, because obviously I have no idea who you are. The thing is, men, when they want to help, okay, so Sometimes they don't understand that you as a wife, as a woman, you just want to express yourself and you're not looking for any advice or solutions. So for him, when you're coming to him with something that seems negative, and there's nothing he can do about it, I think that it sounds to me like he feels helpless. Okay, so because he feels helpless, his response to you is, oh, you are always so negative. And then that's what's causing you to now suppress yourself and not come to him because you don't want to be labeled as negative. Okay, that's I could be wrong, but that sounds like what it is that's happening. So maybe what you could do is come to him and just be like, I just really want to express myself to you. And yes, what I say might sound negative, might sound like I may be complaining, but just know that that's not what my intention is. I simply need to get this load off my shoulders. And once I do, it will really make me feel a lot lighter and a lot better just having spoken to you. So I'm not here to ask for any advice or any feedback, but if you could just listen to me. Okay, so try that approach and see if that helps. Always know that you can turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and know that even Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam, he took his complaints to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because like when his son saw him crying and they said, oh, you're just like always crying and you just always, always in this state, he literally said, I only complain, إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله, that I only take my grief and my complaints to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if your husband doesn't want to listen to you, take your complaints to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Speak to Allah as though he's your best friend. Speak to Allah as though he's listening to you, because he is. He listened to the woman who complained about her husband, and there's a whole surah that was revealed based on that whole surah Mujadala. But again, it's not about just having a relationship with Allah and then letting the relationship with your husband deteriorate. That's not what I'm suggesting. So first, try that approach with your husband and see if that helps. And I really hope it does, inshallah. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, I realize that marriage is not for me. I enjoy being an independent woman and not being submissive to someone stunting my growth. However, I do have a high sexual desire and require a spouse to fulfill my needs. What do I do? Okay, so it seems to me that you associate marriage with being submissive, that you associate marriage with being in a relationship with someone who stunts your growth. So what I would like you to be open to is the fact that marriage does not have to be that way. Marriage does not mean that you need to be in a relationship with someone who stunts your growth. Marriage does not mean being submissive to a husband. That's not what marriage has to mean. There are men out there, and alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me with one of them, where marriage is an equal partnership. It's not about, there's no submission, there's no him stunting my growth or me stunting his growth, but rather growing together. And I'm only saying this to be an example, and I hope that you take it that way. Please don't think that I'm trying to show off. That's not the point, but rather to be an example that there are marriages out there that are beautiful, that are ones that help each other grow and help each other flourish and help each other to reach each other's potential. So if you do have a high sexual drive, the solution to that Islamically would be marriage, in your case, and it would be advisable to reframe your thought, your perception of marriage. Okay, we are over time. We are quite over time now. So we are going to end over here. Gosh, there are still a few more questions, but yes, we do need to end over here. We make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts our gathering here today sincerely for his sake, that I sincerely make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects all of our marriages of our ummah, and Allah makes things easy for all those who are married and helps them overcome the challenges that they are facing. And Allah grant pious, compatible spouses to all those who are seeking to get married, and grant children to all those who are longing to have children. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Just a reminder before we go about Dr. Rania Awad's presentation on depression from an Islamic perspective on Wednesday evening, inshallah. If you have not yet signed up for that, please register for that. It's something that I'm really looking forward to, and it's not to be missed. And if anyone wants Uncle Edris's number, please message Masood and he will share that number with you. You can contact him for further advice or to answer the questions that I did not answer. Please forgive me for any shortcomings on my side. Once again, subhanakallah wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka